All right, let's talk about something that can be, well, terrifying for a lot of freelancers: negotiating with clients. Today, we're going to borrow some incredible tactics from elite FBI hostage negotiators and figure out how to use them to talk about money and scope without breaking a sweat. And come on, let's be real. We've all been there, right? You hang up the phone, you send the email, and you get that sinking feeling in your stomach. Did I just lowball myself? Did I leave money on the table? We are going to put a stop to that starting right now. So, the whole foundation for this new approach comes from a former FBI negotiator named Chris Voss, and it's this idea right here. He says, we are all crazy, irrational, impulsive, emotionally driven animals. And once you accept that, well, everything about negotiation changes. And that leads to the first major mindset shift. You have to realize that negotiation is not a battle of logic. It just isn't. Your perfectly crafted logical arguments, they often fall flat. Why? Because you're not talking to a logical machine. The real secret is learning how to talk to what psychologists call System 1. That's the fast, gut reaction, emotional part of the brain. Okay, so how in the world do we do that? Well, it all starts with a couple of tools from what we'll call the empathy toolkit. And the goal is super simple. It's all about making your client feel completely and totally heard. The cornerstone of this entire approach is something called tactical empathy. Now, this is not about being nice or feeling sorry for your client. Not at all. It's the skill of understanding where they're coming from. And here's the important part: actually saying that understanding out loud. This is how you build trust and just instantly lower their defenses. And let's be super clear about the difference here. Tactical empathy is about understanding their point of view. Sympathy is about agreeing with it. You absolutely do not have to agree that their tiny budget is fair, but you can understand the pressure they're under. Getting that distinction is everything. So our first technique is going to sound so simple, you'll think it can't possibly work. It's called mirroring, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You just repeat the last 1 to 3 words your client says. That's it. The whole process is this. You just listen for the last few important words they say, and then you repeat them back, but with an upward inflection, like you're asking a question. Seriously, that is the entire move. So imagine the client drops that classic line: we're on a very tight budget for this project. Instead of jumping in to defend your price, you just pause and you calmly say, a very tight budget. It feels like magic. It makes them feel heard, and it invites them to explain more without you having to ask a single question. Okay, next step in the toolkit is labeling. This takes things a step further. With labeling, you're going to proactively put a name to an emotion or a situation that you sense from your client. It's an unbelievably powerful way to prove you're paying attention. For example, if your client seems a little stressed or hesitant, you could say something like, it sounds like you have a lot of stakeholders to please. See what that does? It's not an accusation. It's just validating their reality. It diffuses any tension and makes them think, wow, this person gets it. So when you're using mirroring and you're using labeling, you're actually working toward a very specific goal. You are trying to get the client to say 2 little words, 2 magic words that tell you you've had a breakthrough. Now, those words are not, you're right. Think about it. When someone says you're right, it's kind of like a polite way of saying, okay, I get it. Please stop talking now. It's a wall. The breakthrough, the moment they truly feel understood, is when they pause, look at you, and say, that's right. That is your signal. That is the green light. Okay, so you've built this amazing foundation. They feel heard. Now it's time to gently start shifting control of the conversation. And we're going to do that with 2 things: calibrated questions and a totally new way of looking at the word no. This next one is a huge mental flip. We've been trained our whole lives to fear hearing the word no, but you've got to start seeing no as a good thing. A no is not the end of the conversation, it is the start of it. It actually makes the other person feel safe and in control, which, ironically, makes them way more open to what you have to say. So what do you do when you hear a no? You use a calibrated question. This is a special kind of open-ended question that almost always starts with how or what, and it's designed to make your client start solving your problem for you. It's brilliant. So the client hits you with a really low offer. Your gut reaction is to get defensive, right? To say, no way. Instead, you take a breath and you calmly and respectfully ask this one question: how am I supposed to do that? It's a gentle no, and it forces them to see the problem from your side, all without starting a fight. Okay, we've built the trust, we've taken control of the flow. Now it's time for the main event. Let's talk about winning the price game. These are the nitty-gritty tactics for when you have to talk about your rates. And rule number 1 is the title of the book itself. Never split the difference. We're always taught that compromise is the goal, that meeting in the middle is fair. But often, it's just a lazy way out that leaves everyone feeling a little bit ripped off. You can get a much better deal. One way to start is with a move called an accusation audit. This is basically a preemptive strike. You think of every single negative thing the client might be thinking about you or your price, and then you say it out loud first. It might sound totally crazy, but you could say something like, "You're probably going to think my rate is ridiculously high." Or you might be thinking, "This is way more than you wanted to spend on a freelancer." By calling out their fears for them, you take all the power away from those arguments. The attack is disarmed before it can even launch. It is a game changer. And when you finally do name your price, use a specific number. A big, round number like $10,000 feels like a guess, like you just pulled it out of thin air. But a weird number, like $9,850, that feels calculated. That feels like you've done the math, and this is the number. It just feels more firm and less negotiable. Phew, okay, that was a ton of information, I know. So let's pull all this together into a really simple playbook that you can literally use on your next client call. So here are your new tools. First, you start with tactical empathy. You're going to use mirroring and labeling to build that trust. Then you're going to reframe no in your mind. It's a starting point, not an end point. You're going to use calibrated questions like, how am I supposed to do that, to put the ball in their court. And finally, when you talk price, you're going to use specific, calculated numbers to show you mean business. So there you have it, a totally new framework for handling client negotiations. I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Out of everything we just talked about, what's the one tool you're going to try out on your very next client call?